So at this time, if you have a question, you could type it in the questions interface and go to webinar. I trying to see if I have any questions. I think I see some hands raised here. Let's see. Okay, so our first question, a couple questions have come in. So the first question is from Debbie, and she wants to know, does this work with children with autism?
Oh, that's a great question, Debbie. Thank you for asking. Actually, we're doing a research project with SARC here in Arizona around that very issue, and in fact looking to use this technology to help in the identification of vision problems in children with autism. So there's been no specific research published to date at this particular point in time. I can say that anecdotally speaking, some children with autism are able to be screened with ISpy 2020 because it is a video game. It just depends on the extent of the condition, and that's true of most conditions. So I wish I could say with an emphatic yes that every child with autism could be successfully vision screened with ISpy 2020, but I'd be remiss in doing so, and that would not be accurate. What I will say is this, is that my hope is that any child, and this just doesn't apply to autism, but any child with special needs, it would be my hope that they're getting full examinations, not just of their eyes, but that their health is being monitored very closely by professionals. And ISpy 2020 is not a replacement for a professional eye exam. So, but yes, we have had success with several different types of special needs children. I hope that helps. I'm sorry I couldn't be more specific.
We have quite a few more questions coming in, which is exciting. We have from Terry asks, recommended to screen every child every year. Up to what age child is this appropriate for?
That's another great question. So I'm a huge proponent of screening children all the way through high school. Now, some people would argue that that's not necessary, and to a certain degree that's true. One of the nice things is that as children get older, and I say nice in quotations, is that they get more opinionated, more vocal, and they certainly have no problem sharing with you if they've got an issue. So hopefully when children are in their teenage years, if something should happen to their vision, they're more likely to say, hey, I can't see the blackboard. The public health dilemma of amblyopia is an interesting one in that it is critical to detect amblyopia before age 9. So when I talk about vision screening every child every year, I'm really talking about certainly from age 4 or 5 all the way through age 9 at a minimum. After that, I would hope that children would have the ability, if they had clear vision, let's say a child had clear vision at age 9, well, they're now beyond the risk of developing amblyopia. So if their vision started to become blurry at age 10, 11, 12, I would hope that they would be able to articulate it at that point in time. Again, with special needs children, I think every year. But as children get older, beyond age, let's say 10, we can start to screen them with less frequency.
Okay, and Monica is asking, can more than one sponsor be recognized on one report?
Well, that's a good question, Monica. Yes, up to 3 sponsors can be recognized on one report. And in fact, the sponsors do not need to be of equal monetary value. So let's say that a school sets out a goal of raising $5,000. They could sell a $2,000 sponsorship to one, and a $1,000 sponsorship to another, and $2,000 or $1,000 sponsorship to another. And there's different ways to recognize them on the report. You can either divvy up the amount of space on that banner, or you can print a certain number of reports, vision screening reports, for sponsor A, and then another portion of reports for the other sponsors, obviously in proportion to the amount of dollars that they've contributed.
Dr. Rachel is asking how much peripheral equipment is required, and is this considered a movable screening device?
Oh, I love the questions. Goodness. Everyone was
There's,
listening.
there's a lot of good ones. I mean,
I
you're not
wasn't
even
even,
halfway through, and
yeah, I
you're
wasn't
you're
even
in for
listening.
it.
Well, those are good questions. So yes, we do have a pediatrician out here that is using iSpy on his mobile van to provide screenings to homeless children. So it is mobile in nature. As far as peripheral equipment that is needed, it's a great question because I neglected, excuse me, to explain that iSpy is played by the child at a distance of 10 feet. So you need a laptop computer and then a USB extension cable of 10 feet into which you would plug the mouse. That 10-foot extension cable actually serves two purposes. One, it serves as a measuring stick for when you're setting up your vision screenings because you just use that USB cable to know where you should sit the child, how far you should seat the child from the video game, the laptop screen. So you just need an extension cable, and then you also need some disposable light adhesive eye patches, all of which we provide. And you also need a pair of red-blue glasses that are anaglyphic in nature. They are made specifically for this purpose. They actually contain a slight dioptric adjustment in the red lens for dealing with all this geeky stuff that engineers like me deal with. But it's to balance out the wavelengths, the perceived distance, and all of these other things. And we provide those glasses as well.
So everything's included that you need, right?
Yes.
Kind of bottom line there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Deborah wants to know, does this program need to be installed on laptops, or could the school's computer lab be used?
Well, thank you, Deborah, for thinking of that. I love that. I love that idea. And yes, it can be installed on desktop computers in the computer lab. The only requirement is that you're using a flat screen monitor. And it's not that I'm prejudicial against CRTs, it's just that the colors are slightly different. And so the glasses that we use for stereoscopic testing, depth perception testing, require the use of flat panel monitors. But yes, certainly it technically does not need to be a laptop computer.
That leads us into our next question from Kathy, who wants to know, can you put this software on a bunch of Kindles or other tablets so you can just pack up and go school by school in a timely manner?
Good. I want to hire Kathy. That's a great idea. We've actually been talking to several companies that are in the eye chart business about doing this. We will be developing some applications that are tablet-based. iSpy, however, will always be run on a laptop for a couple of reasons. The testing distance is incredibly important. It is necessary to test children at distance for visual acuity. And I don't want to get too technical, but I'm going to for just a second. The prevalence of myopia is really the issue with school-age children because there's so much close focusing going on, their iPads, their phones, laptop computers, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very common that a child can read a book but not see the blackboard, and they don't understand that they should be able to see the blackboard as well. So the bottom line is that in order to screen a child at 10 feet, you need a certain amount of screen size. And that is really what it comes down to in my type of terminology is you just need a certain size screen, and iPads and tablets are too small for that. There are some other vision tests that we're looking to incorporate, including near visual acuity testing on portable devices, but iSpy needs to stay on a laptop or a screen that can be placed 10 feet away from the child.
Sonia wants to know, I did not hear it mentioned, but the screening is is this screening acceptable screening in the state of Texas?
Oh, it's funny you mentioned Texas, actually. So Texas has some interesting rules, and we're working with them on this right now. I would like to say yes. Um, there may be a requirement in Texas, just to let you know, to use very specific optotypes. So we're in the process of diving into that. One of the good news about ISpy 2020 is that it can be customized very easily to meet any state's requirements because it is essentially just an electronic visual acuity chart. So for example, if certain states required that you not test depth perception or color vision any other way except manually, then ISpy in your state would conform to those requirements. The idea of using a wall chart electronically is widely accepted, including by the Vision Screening Council of APOS. And so the only question that we are trying to resolve currently in Texas is whether or not we have to use specific optotypes. And I'm sorry, we should, some things don't move as quickly as you want, so I don't know when we'll have an answer to that. But please stay in touch or provide us your information so that we can keep you apprised of the developments there.
And this is Jessica, just would if they want something customized, would they just talk to you about that, directly, or how would they, express if they wanted something customized exactly? Or can they do that themselves?
Well, no, because in order to meet state requirements, it's something that has to be done by us. In other words, we would not allow users to just change optotypes with any artwork that they wanted because that may impact the reliability of the vision screening. So we work with states just like we work with electronic health record systems to facilitate integration. We're responsible for doing all of that. The user has no responsibility or culpability there when it comes to being compliant with the state requirements. We don't want the schools being burdened with that. And in fact, they don't even have to check a box to say, please use, Texas state requirements. That happens automatically when they install the software. In other words, if you install the software in Texas, we know based on your activation code that you're a Texan customer, and ISpy will comply based on those requirements.
Wow. All right. Dr. Rachel is back with another question, and it is, what is the validity for children ages 3 to 6, and do you recommend its use for preschoolers?
What was the second part of the question? Do I recommend what?
The use of the software for preschoolers.
Oh, yes. So, wow. Thank you, Rachel. Dr. Rachel. So the validity for the age group that I've got the independent validation study, and I'm more than happy to send you a copy of that. The age range of their sample size was slightly older than your inquiry, so we do not have a formal study on that age group that you are asking about. With regards to the use of ISpy in children younger than, I would say younger than 4, I'm probably not a huge fan of. Here's the issue, Dr. Rachel, is that there are so many children that are 3 years old that play ISpy that it shocks me. And it almost, I don't want to say it does, it surprises me. I mean, I think at some point, I don't even know how to say this. The kids are so technologically comfortable that it's beyond my comfort level. But they know, oh, I pick my character and I match the letters and I click the button. They know this instinctively, and I don't understand it, but they do. Just professionally, I have a problem recommending it just because in my mind, without the hard scientific data to back it up, I'm not sure if it's of its efficacy at that age range. I like the AAP and APOS guidelines because really this program is designed by schools for schools. The ISpy product in and of itself is really tailor-made for implementation in schools. It's not to say that it can't be used outside of schools, and of course we love when it is, but it's really designed for implementation in schools. Preschool, I guess it depends on the age range. Objective, you know, you can try doing a vision screening on any age child using ISpy, but then it would require a certain degree of subjectivity with regards to, or interpretation on your part as to whether or not the child really understood that it was a matching game. And that's why the objective, we're a huge proponent of using objective vision screening technology on young children, like I had mentioned, because you really don't have to worry quite, and I say this not really tongue-in-cheek, but there's of course exceptions to this, but generally speaking, looking at risk factors, you know, earlier in my presentation I talked about a stratified approach to vision screening children. So in young children, we should be looking for gross visual deficits, and those, for the most part, will be found with objective devices. In older children, we're looking for more and more refined visual characteristics and skills. And so that is why changing over to subjective in older children is so appropriate. So I would say 5 years old for certain, ISpy 2020, and at 4 years old, we've got hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of, absolutely thousands of children that have been screened. At 3, I would hold off. Either not vision screen them because we don't want to generate false referrals, or use an objective technology.
Okay. And that seemed to be a lot of people's questions, actually. They were talking about 3 and 4-year-olds. And, you know, so you're saying 4, but, you know, okay, but 3, you're not on board with 3, right?
Yeah, and I would say that with 3-year-olds, I'm not really too worried about it. You know, there's not, premature children, if a child has been born prematurely, they should be evaluated right after birth for retinopathy of prematurity. Those children should probably be seen by an eye care professional annually. But a non-premature birthed baby, unless there's something of visual occlusion, such as a cataract or a ptosis, like a droopy eyelid, or visibly crossed eyes, anything that is indicating itself visually is obviously cause for concern. But with regards to assessing the health of their eye using a vision screening, I would say that at 4 years old, absolutely, but at 3, I'm not horribly concerned about it, and certainly by 5 they should be vision screened because we want to have enough time to correct any issue, and that's when they really start to need their vision, more so than at 3 or 4 for academic purposes.
Okay. Karen wants to know, can the software be used by multiple schools within a school district, or does each school have to buy its own program?
That's another good question. So each school needs its own license for ISpy 2020. However, districts, when an entire district it uses ISpy 2020, there are discounts that are offered for district-wide use. So I guess that's kind of a perhaps not a complete answer, or it's both yes and no. So each school ends up with its own license, and the reason for that, I want to talk a little bit about that real quick, is that when you have each vision screening report is completely customized, including the name of the teacher, the grade of the student, and the name of the school. And so that's part of the reason for that. We also have to maintain segregated data for each school. So school A cannot see school B's data. The district can see all of the data, but from school to school they cannot share data. So there are some infrastructural, technological reasons why the schools have to be separated the way that they are. They each get their own license. There's costs associated with that. But again, when districts come on board as a whole, there are discounts that are applied.
That makes sense. Karen would like to know, is there any way to get result letters in other languages, specifically Russian and Polish?
Fortunately, I'm fluent in both of, no, actually I'm not. So I would love to continue offering reports in different languages, and so translation in reports of the reports into other languages is something that, again, from a technological standpoint, is fairly straightforward. And if the demand requires that we do that, we absolutely will. So yes, there's no language that the reports cannot be offered in. It's just right now English and Spanish.
Let's see here. Dr. Rachel would like to know, do you see a use for this system in a state where subjective screenings conducted by state-trained technicians are mandated, including treatment follow-up?
I guess that would be the prerogative of the organizations that conduct the vision screenings. If it were beneficial to them, you know, my answer is yes, optimistically, because my belief would be that, for example, if I were the one that was responsible for conducting vision screenings, I would want to use a tool that made my job easier rather than pointing to a wall chart. But that's perhaps just me. So I think it's really incumbent upon the organizations and the people that are actually doing the vision screenings themselves to learn about ISpy and see if it's a value add for them. Everything that we do, we really want to make sure is a value add. We don't want to encumber anyone with legislative requirements or other encumbrances that cause them any level of stress. Our goal is to make their job easier. So if this makes this easier for them, then absolutely. For example, we have a lot of organizations that like to use ISpy 2020 because of the data collection capability, because it saves them an inordinate amount of time and money just having to deal with the storage and reporting of data. The collection of data is a huge issue. So if it helps them in that vein, then maybe there's a fit. The other possibility is that ISpy 2020 has the ability to record traditional vision screening results for organizations that want to continue to do exactly as you just said, Dr. Rachel, but they want to have the ability to collect and have their data maintained for them. So there's options there. But yes, I see it as a potential fit.
So Terry has two questions. Does this test screen near and distance acuity, and does it test eyes individually or only together?
Very good question. So I'm going to start with the second question first. It tests eyes individually and together, both. So it first assesses whether or not the child understands that it's a matching game. Then it assesses their visual acuity binocularly, and then it does so monocularly. Once we know that children have acceptable visual acuity, they can see a threshold out of each eye individually. We then assess their ability to fuse the images together by showing them a stereogram. Color vision is in there as well when selected, but I'm talking about assessing their visual and stereo acuity. So once we know that the eyes can see clearly, we then make sure that the eyes are aligned and that the brain is processing the data successfully and that the optic nerve is transporting the data to the vision center of the brain successfully by showing them the stereograms. And that also will look for, like I said, eye alignment, but also eye suppression issues. Now, with regards to the first question is,
near and distant.
yeah, that's a little bit more challenging the reason why I hesitate is because there's this whole discussion around whether or not you need to do near visual acuity testing. So let me give you the simple answer first. Anyone that wants to do near visual acuity testing can, and if they want to enter the results into ISpy 2020, they can. So that's, I guess, a yes. Does ISpy 2020 do near visual acuity testing? The answer is no. And then there's a whole big philosophical discussion that I could get into around that, and I fear that all it would do is put you to sleep. But suffice it to say that we will detect extreme hypermetropia, but not subtle or mild. And that's, again, talking about stratified testing. In other words, what we want to do is make sure that the child can see the blackboard, and the way that the test is structured is that if they can't read a book, you're going to know it. And we'll know it as well, because in those extreme cases, they're not going to be able to pass the test because they won't even be able to see at 10 feet. So that's why that testing distance is, we've tried to design the test in such a way that we catch almost every child that has a vision problem without over-referring. If your state requires you to do near VA and you want to do that separately from ISpy 2020, that's absolutely possible, and we'll capture those results for you with just a couple key clicks.
Okay. So a couple more questions and a couple more minutes, and we have to do our drawing for the winner. So the last two more. One is from Sonia. What lighting factors do we need to worry about when we use Vision Quest?
Oh, that's such a good question. So you just want to make sure there's no glare on the screen, and the screen's obviously pointing at the child. That would be helpful. But ambient lighting conditions are non-critical. It's not like some of the objective cameras that are very sensitive to pupillary dilation and those types of things. So all you have to do is make sure that the child can see the screen, whether windows are open or not. It's not a huge impact. Again, just make sure there's not a glare on the screen, a physical glare.
Okay. Can the data be transferred, this is from Deborah, sorry, can the data be transferred to another school site for a student who moves to that school, assuming, of course, that school also uses ISpy, so a student graduates to middle school?
Well, we've got some clever people out there. That's really neat. So not exactly. There's some there are some schools that have managed to do something similar via their own student health information systems. But the only way that they're able to do that successfully is when they use a student information number that you input into ISpy 2020. So one of the fields that we did not populate during my demo was the student ID number. But you're allowed, if you use a student ID number, then yes, but the way that you do it is you export your data into Excel or into whatever student health information, your electronic health record system is, and then you would manually, the other school would manually bring those records into their system. As far as ISpy 2020 bringing those individual records over, right now that capability does not exist, but this is not the first time that such a good idea has been postulated. So we'll certainly address that because we do have children that were vision screened years ago with ISpy that are moving to other schools. So it's a good question. Thank you.
A few more, and I think we covered them, but Cheryl wanted to know, is the screening approved for Head Start programs?
Well, we do have some Head Start programs using ISpy 2020. Head Start's really that 0 to 5 target, so they're using combinational techniques. So in younger children, they're using objective technologies, and then in the older children, they're using ISpy.
Okay. And Farah had asked, is ISpy approved by state requirements? And we kind of talked about how, you guys, based on the state, will customize ISpy, right?
Right. Well, we will, and I feel bad for certain states because some of the, in many cases, no legislation may be better than legislation. And it just depends how the letter of the law is written. So if there's restrictions on the vision screenings that are conducted, then we may not qualify. But I would have to look at the specific state. What I do know is that we meet the national guidelines and the guidelines of the AAP and APOS. So, and the Vision Screening Committee of APOS, because like I had said earlier, it's an electronic visual acuity system. So, but we can certainly please follow up with us and make sure that we talk to figure out whether or not we meet your specific state requirements. And if it's as simple, like in the state of Texas, if it's just implementing a particular optotype family or doing something along those lines, that's easily done.
Okay, well that is all of the questions we've received, so we can go ahead and do our drawing for $500 off, right? That was, oh my gosh, is that what we promised? That's crazy. What were we thinking?
We'll agree to that.
Okay, and so I need to get like a drum roll, but I don't have one. But the winner is going to be Christine Zimmerman is the winner of the $500 off.
Congratulations.
To Christine, yes. So Christine, we have your email address and from when you registered, and we will be in contact with you via email. In fact, we'll be contacting all of you via email after the webinar. You have to give us a little time to get our resources together for you, but we'll be sending you a recording to this webinar and a link to the product page and a link to follow up and ask more questions. And you can respond to that email with any additional questions that you guys think of, since you're so good at thinking of them, obviously. Sure, you'll have more. So you can respond to that email with any additional questions that you might have. And again, thank you from School Health. And, Rich, if you want to sign off.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing from you with more questions. And please feel free to do so. And Jessica, thank you again for hosting this. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, no problem. All right, everybody have a great day. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.